Hello everyone, and welcome to another in my video tutorial series. And in this one we'll be continuing our SQL studies, and we'll be using the Oracle Apex tool to practice those SQL skills and applying your overall database skills, going from the logical model into your actual physical database and using your database. And in this video we will be focusing on joins. Now sometimes you need to use data from more than one table, and this actually happens very frequently in the database world. And we simply use a join when we need to link the tables together and access data from both those tables. And there's lots of syntax that's involved based on the type of join you're using, whether it's an inner join, a full join, which would be an outer join. The other two outer joins would be a left outer join or right outer join. And just make sure that you understand the types. An inner join is going to select records that have matching values in both tables. And the inner is implied. An inner join is just the same as a join. Like I said, the inner keyword is optional. For your left outer join, this is going to select those records from the leftmost table with the matching right table. If you're going to do a right outer join, this is going to select those records from the second, which is that rightmost table, with the matching left table. And if you're using a full outer join, this is going to select all the records that match either the left or the right table records. So just depending on where you need your records from, that's how you're going to determine the syntax that you use in your SQL script for your joins. Well, let's go ahead and jump into Oracle Apex tool, and using the database that I've created, I will present some examples on these joins. And I've got some parameters that I'll have listed in the Oracle Apex tool that you can see, and that's what we'll work through, providing some examples based on some of that. Well, here are all the steps I want to complete here. As you can see, I'm using the academic database I created, and throughout the script, whenever I'm writing scripts, I always make sure to put in some comments, and in this instance we'll use the double dashes for when we want to put comments in, that we can, when we refer back to our script, know exactly why we did what we did. And that is just a common practice, a best practice, so that if you leave and someone else uses your scripts, they understand why you did what you did. And this is just so we're not trying to spend extra time understanding scripts. If we can see the comments, then we know exactly why someone did what they were doing, or why they attempted to do what they think they were doing. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these things we're going to do here now. In this first step, I want us to display the different courses offered by the departments in the school. So I know from this that I need to think about courses as one of my tables that I should look at, and look at all of the column names that are in there and what other elements in this question might relate to other tables. And you can see I'm talking about courses offered and departments. So if I take a look at my tables using the Find Tables button here, you can see right away that I've got courses table right here, and I have got a department table right below it. And I can click on these at any time to see what columns are being used in those tables based on when I initially created the database. And I've got course ID, course name, session ID, and department ID. Now when I refer back to my question, display the current courses offered by the departments. And I can kind of see what all I need to include here. I need to know the course ID and course name, obviously, from this table. And then the only other piece of information I need is department. Well, we've got department ID, but I don't want that displayed. So I really like to know what name that department is. So if I go back and look at my tables again and look at the department one, examine that one, there's a department name. That's what I want to join with my other table. And since we're using department ID, obviously it's a primary key here and a foreign key in the course table, as we saw, then that means that the information should be able to join naturally. And remember that natural joins are going to use all of the columns with the matching names and data types to join the tables. So let's go ahead and take a look at creating our SQL script to be able to display the different courses. Even though joins are probably the most difficult thing you will do in the database world and working with SQL, this script is relatively easy using our Oracle SQL syntax. So I'm going to go ahead and put a couple spaces here just because that's how I roll. I want to make sure I leave room for my comments here for this question. I'm just going to put, display the different courses offered by the department. And I could just copy this and paste here. And obviously I should work on my spelling here. There we go. Now SQL, the database, will know to just skip over that line if I was running this and had selected this along with my code. So let's go ahead, and I like to do everything in caps, so I'm going to make sure my caps are on. I'm going to select based on the columns from each of the tables we looked at. Select course ID. I also want to see the course name to be displayed. And the department name from the department table. Where do I want to get this information from? I have a problem putting the T in department. Alright, from the AD course, as we saw earlier, that table, then I'm going to naturally join. Make sure you put in that proper syntax there. The information from the AD department table. And I'll put a semicolon there to end my script. So if I go ahead and select this, we'll test this to see if it works. I will run this script. And you can see I did get results down here as expected. I've got mine set to only display 10 rows at a time. I could increase that here in Oracle Apex to however many I want. Just for demonstration purposes, I only need to see 10. I know there are more than 10 rows, but this, as you see up here, displays the course ID, the course name from our course table, as well as the department name from our department table. And all of this was based on the fact that we had the course ID or the department ID as a shared column between the two tables that matches the information, so we can do a natural join. Let's go ahead and take a look at this next one, and this is going to display the courses offered in the fall session. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and I can comment out here just to keep it easy. I could just do that, but always make sure that you comment out to provide an explanation. And this is just on programming in general. You should always have your comment sections so that we know what blocks of code are for. Alright, so for this one, I know that I am once again going to use the course table, and it says in the fall session. So for me, I know from the building of my database that I should also look at my academic session table. And if I click on the find tables here, and I should have cleared that one out. So the find tables and my academic session table here, if I look at this, I have session ID and session name as my columns. If I go back and look at my course table, you see I have session ID as a column here as well. So I can determine how I'm going to use my join statement here by using the session ID in this one. So we're going to be using session ID for this. And for this, based on the information in our tables when we created them, I know that for the fall session, I'm going to be using session ID equal to 200. Now I can always, just do a basic select statement, select all to display all the records from academic session. And I put my semicolon there. And I could also just do that. A lot of times when we do SQL, it's nice to just have single lines to be able to evaluate. But I'm going to run this. And I did not spell session right, so there's a very silly syntax there because I couldn't spell. Let's run this again. And I did not put AD at the beginning of that. Another syntax, which is why we should take the time to make sure we pay attention to how our tables are named and how our columns are named, and make sure we take time to spell correctly. There we go. There we see at the bottom here, I have a few different sessions. We're not worried about the blah session. For our question, we wanted to look at only fall session, and we know that the results are going to have this session ID of 200. So that is going to be where we explicitly tell the database, hey, I only want these records where the session ID is equal to 200. Alright, so there is I've looked at everything, I've got all my information. Now I can build my statement. And as I said a minute ago, I'm going to be using the using clause because it can be used to specify only those columns that should be used for an equijoin. So let's go ahead and write that script. So I've got my select. I'm going to use course name. I also want to have displayed the session name, obviously. And I want these two pieces of information to come from my AD for academic database course table, and I'm going to do a join that with the academic database or academic session table in my database. I'm going to use the using clause, using session ID, to create this join. Now my where clause, where, as we mentioned earlier, session ID is equal to 200, and I've got a typo here. Where session ID is equal to 200, and then in the script per SQL standards with the semicolon. Now go ahead and take a look at that, and we will run this to make sure that it's going to work correctly. So select that script, hit run, and you can see I've got the course names that are being offered in those fall sessions. I've only got 5 of those because of the size of my tables, but I can go back in and look at each of those courses or each of those tables based on some select statements to match up to see if my script is correct, and this is correct. Now, I hope that you noticed that I started using aliases up here, and I shouldn't have. It didn't matter, but that's just when we go doing joins and lots of joins, we just start doing aliases to say that, to shorten what we're going to type in the long run. Now, because I did it here, a lot of you might want to use it down here in the where clause, but you wouldn't do that because we already identified this column in the using clause, so I didn't really need, and it would have created an error had I used an alias to specify either the academic or the course table. and it just wasn't needed for this type of script. Let's go ahead and jump down and look at the next one. Display the course details, the department that offers, display the course details, the department that offers the courses, and students who have enrolled for those courses. So that's hopefully not going to be too tricky for you, but you should just look at it, see what tables you need to use, what columns you need to use to get the results that you're wanting to see in the output. Now with this one, I see that we're going to be looking at courses, departments, students, so that kind of tells me a lot about which tables to work with to complete my join. We've already looked at the course table above to know what's in those tables, what columns are being used. Well, now I'm looking in and seeing that I need some grades as well. So based on what I did, I know that I need to use my student course and my course table. And if I take a look now at my student course table, I see that I have student ID, course ID, and if I go back and look at the other one, so knowing that I have those two columns, student ID and course ID, there we go, it does not like to play nice with me. I have course ID here, so I know that I can join these two tables using the course ID. And here I'm definitely going to use my aliases here to do this join. This one's a little bit trickier to do because we're going to be joining it from the course, from the department table, and we're also going to be using our student course. So there's a lot going on this. So let's go ahead and just start typing this out because we know we have a lot of different tables. We've got 3 tables involved in this, so we are definitely going to use some heavy aliases here for our script. So I'm going to add some lines there. You can comment this out if you want, however you want to do it. So for this, obviously I'm going to start with my select statement. I'm going to select, and based on the information given there, I obviously need the course name. I want to know the student ID taking that course. And I want to see the department name. Where am I going to get this information from? Well, I want to get this from the student course, obviously. You can use whatever alias you want to use here. It doesn't really matter. I usually like to use letters that are in the name, and we do our aliases with lowercase so it stands out for us. And from that information, I'm going to join information from the course and department tables. And here's where some more aliases are going to come into play here. So I'm going to do my join statement now, and I want to join with the AD course table, and I'm going to give that an alias of C. You can use whatever letter you want, and I'm going to join this on the premise that my academic course table, I'm going to use the course ID column that is in both of those tables of both my course and my student course table. So joining based on the fact that the course ID in both of these tables is equal. Course ID in the course table is equal to the course table, or the course ID in my student course. And we're not done yet, but just look at that. We're selecting from the student course those column names based on join of our student course table with our academic course table, or academic database table course. So these two tables, we're going to join the information from them based on the fact that course ID is equal in both our course and our student course tables. We're also going to join the department table, for this case the academic database department table, based on how I labeled my table when I designed the database. And I'm just going to call this one D for department. And I haven't used that letter previously in any other aliases. Join the academic department table on the premise that the department ID, I'm going to go ahead and just type this out. This is how I usually do it. Is equal to department ID. Now I'm going to create my aliases here so that the logic makes sense. So if you take a look at here, now we'll put in our aliases for where we're doing our joins. And this second one is always going to be what you just put in the top here of your join statement. So that is going to be D dot to represent my department table. Then I'm going to go back here, and where am I making sure that my department ID is equal to my department ID in my department table? Well, based on looking at the columns above, or the columns in our tables, we know that this is tied to our course table, which would be my alias of C. So we've got two join statements here based on the course ID and department ID. We're saying that the course ID is equal in both our student course table and our course table, and we're saying to join the information, the department ID information, from the department table based on the fact that our department ID column rows are equal in our department table and our course table. As I said earlier, joins are really tricky, and you have to just think them out in a very logical sense to understand, to make sure you're getting your script correct and that the results for your script are correct. And when you're done evaluating it, all you can do is select it and run it and see if you have any type of syntax errors that get thrown out at you, or if you get the results, and then once you get those results, see if they make sense. After taking a deep breath and hitting run, you can see that I got exactly what I wanted. The course name, that is listed in this column, the student ID, and then the department name. And you can see this student is tied to the Principles of Accounting course, the Strategic Planning course, and the Introduction to Business Law course, which are all in the Department of Accounting. So that is using that join statement. I looked at 3 different tables and got information that I could return for the output based on the customer, coworker, whoever wanting us to display the course details based on the department that offers, which department offers the course, and which students have enrolled in those courses. and I wanted to know what that course name was. So knowing your database, knowing which tables have which columns, knowing which columns in tables might be able to help you create those joins will help you think through the logic. Let's do a few more examples here. We'll take a look at this fourth one I have listed here. Alright, I want to display course details. Well, that sounds kind of familiar. Display course details. The department that offers courses and the students who have enrolled for those courses. But we've got an extra part here where the department is equal to 30. We should be jumping for joy here because all we need to do is copy our previous script, paste that to save us some time. I'm going to comment this out, and I've been told that I need it for the courses where their department is equal to 30 or they're in department 30. Well, I'm already working with the department table and department IDs, so now I just need a simple where clause. I already know that my script works to give me all of these course names with students that are enrolled in those courses and what department they're in. But now I'm going to limit this department table. So I'm going to not end my script here. Now I'm going to put a where clause in. And I know that what I want is department. Need to stay consistent here. Where our department ID is equal to 30. Well, now I just need to decide where am I getting that information from? Well, I'm getting it from the department table, obviously. So I'm going to put my alias here of get that information from the department table. Alright, so I'm limiting my results to only where the department ID is equal to 30. Now we won't see department ID displayed here because that's not what we're wanting to know. We wanted to display what the name of that department is because there's not much value to what the ID number is for this, and for our customer they want to be able to see the actual name. That department ID may not mean anything to them. So if we run our script with our fingers crossed, deep breath, and then we will see that we have limited our results to the computer science department, which if we go to our department ID, if we ran a select statement to test this, which is what you should do before you run your script. I just remembered it. I can do a select all, not that you have to, it's just quick and easy to do that. From department where ID, we don't need an alias here because we're only working with one table. If we run that, we should see that our department name, everything listed is from the database department name. If we want to look at everything, we could end our script here to take a look at absolutely everything. Database networking, information technology. We have lots of different department IDs tied to department names. Now I do have an issue here because I did not use the right table name. I used academic department or academic database department. I actually have more than one table because this is a test database. It's called department, so that's why I didn't get the correct results. So if we put in the proper AD here to say that's the exact table I want, and I run this, hopefully your mind's not spinning too much, and that we will see that computer science is indeed listed here. That's why when we run this script here, it says computer science. Hopefully that was bothering you as you were watching the video. Now you can see why. Because we have to make sure we use the right table names, especially if you have a very large database. Alright, as if that wasn't enough, dealing with joins, we have to make sure that we are using the proper tables, the proper column names, and making sure that we have those associations. So let's say that we're given a script from a coworker, and we have this script here, and we need to look at that and determine if it would execute successfully based on just looking at it right away. If not, what must be changed here? And let's go ahead and test it and see what it should be after we modify this. So go ahead and take a close look at that. I'm going to change this real quick because I don't like the mixing of capital and lowercase when we're using aliases here. So we're selecting the course name, marks, exam, and ID from our course table. We're going to join with the exam results using course ID from exam results table. Well, just looking at this, when joining with the using clause, like I said, you're not supposed to qualify a column that is used in this using clause right here. So since we're using here, we don't really need to do that. This statement, if we change it and we remove the qualifier, it should execute successfully. So we're going to leave the select clause here. Look here. Alright, obviously with mine I need to change this to AD so that I don't get it mixed up with other ones. And I'm going to go ahead and leave that whatever letter you want to use. I can use C if I want, D, Z, it doesn't matter. I just like to keep them so they logically make sense to me, so I'm going to use C, lowercase. Join with the exam results, A, B, E, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to use E for exam. Obviously I need to put AD in there. Because that's the name of the table in my database here. And instead of the using here, I'm going to say on the premise that my course ID for these two tables in my from statement are equal. And I'll just go ahead and remove the aliases here, remove the parenthesis, and let's see, that course ID is equal to course ID. I'll go back and put my aliases in. And you should be able to understand where you want to place these. I'm going to say that since this is the last one I wrote, the values in course ID in my exam results table are equal to the results of my course ID column in my academic course table. This should work, but you never know until you run it. So go ahead and select that and run your script to see if you've got a syntax error or if you need to go and examine your tables a little bit more. I got the results I was hoping for. I've got the course names, the grades or marks that they received, and the exam ID, which exam it was. And I've got lots of results here. I'm just showing you 10. But the 3 columns were listed. I got information from both tables based on the fact the course ID, which I'm not displaying here, was equal in both of those tables. So we fixed the script that we were given from our coworker and made it work based on the rules of joins. Now let's take a look at this next one here. Write a query to display the details of the marks or grades obtained by the students who have opted for the course if it's in a course ID range from 190 to 195. So we're going to apply some logic to this to be able to completely write our script here. Obviously, we know we're going to start with our select keyword here, select, and what do I want to select here? I want to know what the course name is, obviously, for where they got their marks. I want to see the marks, and really we're just rebuilding what we just did. So rather than take the time to type it, let's copy paste and make some changes. Alright, so I got that part, got my join statement, and on course ID, let's go ahead and make our changes here. So let's take out the alias part here, and we're just going to say on course ID from our exam results table. That's between, so that's where we're going to use our between keyword based on what we were asked in this here, between this range of 190 to 195. And 195, and end our script. So if we go ahead and run that, and I have got the results I was expecting. Our results are only going to give us where our course IDs are going to reside between somewhere from 190 to 195. And you can write a select statement to test this, just like we did earlier, to make sure you're getting the results that you expect. Let's go ahead and test that, shall we? I'm going to do a select statement to, when we know that we're getting the course name from our course table, we're getting our results, all the marks and exam ID from our exam results table. So let's select all, I don't know, from our AD exam results, where our course ID is between, just like we used in our script, 190 and 195. And this will include 190, 191, 192, 193, 194, and 195. So it's going to include those values. So it wouldn't be 191 through 194. It's actually going to include our outer or and our inner limits, or beginning and ending limits of 190 and 195. So if we run this script, we will see what kind of results we get. And if we would go in here and we see, like right here, we've got 190 and we have results of 91, well, we'd have to tie this to exam 500. Well, we don't know what that exam is. So, or what course 190 is. But if we go and we look at our course table, we would know what course number 190 is. So we could do another one, select all from AD course to see what you're working with. Run that. We see we have all these here. We could order by course ID, or we could just say where course ID is equal to 190. Run that, then we'll know what the course name is. We can see that's Principles of Accounting. And if we scroll down through, if we had more or less, we'd see Principles of Accounting. We would find out which student or which exam and the marks for it. So you can write scripts to try to narrow down and make sure that your results are what you are or what you're wanting. So just, I'm not going to go through all these and actually show which, pull all the ones up for course IDs, you should be able to, at this point, write a script to show all the ones where the course ID was for course 190. I'm not going to go into that, but our script works. Let's say we want to retrieve the rows from the exam results table again, even if there are no matching records in the course table. Well, how would we do that? Well, this goes back to knowing what our join types are. So for this one, based on we wanting to see even if there are no matching records in the course table, we are going to do a left outer join. So this shouldn't be too difficult. It's just knowing the data types. So let's just start with our select statement. And what are we wanting to select? We're going to select the student ID. And we're going to use aliases, obviously. I'm just putting in what columns I want. Then I'll decide where I want those columns. Marks, course ID. And our last one to display is, well, what's the course name? Where am I getting this information from? I'm going to obviously use, since we're looking at results, the AD exam results. I'm going to left outer join. Where am I going to do the outer join from? The course table, so AD underscore course. And based on the premise of our course IDs are equal, knowing that from our examining our tables earlier. So course ID is equal to course ID. And then we enter our script. Well, now we're going to apply the aliases. We were working with two different tables. Well, we need to establish some aliases to be able to determine where we're getting our results from. So just looking at this, my method is to use the letter that represents the table name as best as I can. So I am going to be using E for exam results, and that should be a lowercase e. And for my academic course, it doesn't matter. I'll just use D or C. It doesn't matter, but we'll just use C. And then we're going to say that our course ID is equal for both of these tables. And then when I go back up here, well, where are those columns going to be represented from? Well, I am going to use my exam results from the student ID, or student ID from the exam results. So that's going to be e.studentID for my alias. Same with the marks and the course ID. And then we want the course name to come from, you guessed it, the course table. So C dot. Now, unless I made a silly mistake here, this should run without issue. So cross your fingers, deep breath, hit run, and I got the results that I was expecting to see on that script. I've got the course name, which I got from the course table, which I joined with my exam results table, and where my student ID, the grades, and the course ID were all listed. That's it for that one, using a left outer join. We were able to see the exam results even if there are no matching records in our academic course table. Alright, this last one here, explain in general, if we take a look at this script that we're provided here, what, in some general database terms, what that output would be if we execute this statement. And for mine, I'm going to obviously say, well, I need to do AD, because that's how it's typed in mine. And I'm going to select all from the exam table, cross join with the exam type. Well, if if I look at this, and I'm just going to say in general terms what this should do, if we execute this statement here, it would result in a Cartesian product of the exam table and the exam type table. I think this is actually supposed to be exam details and not my exam table itself. It doesn't matter. All I'm doing is explaining in general terms. Alright, this here, using the cross join, is going to create a Cartesian product of these two tables, the exam detail table and the exam type table. That's all it's going to do. It's going to give me that Cartesian product of these two tables. That's it. Now once you're done with this, you would of course save all of this and you would give it a name that makes sense. And then that way, if you want to refer to it later, to use or to change or to reuse and not have to start from scratch, that's what you do, is always saving your scripts so you can reuse them. So this is where you would do that here in Oracle Apex. Well, that is it for this very lengthy video on joins. But as I said, if you speak with database administrators and those who work with SQL a lot, you will find out that starting out, joins are the hardest thing to grasp. So all you can really do is practice them. And I hope you found this video helpful and that you will continue to build your SQL databases and write more scripts, practice your scripts, and always try to do some additional scripts to test and see if what you did is actually what you're wanting to do. Because in the real world, this can be a pretty big deal if you have, let's say, a government agency involved and they need to know specific information. You need to be able to provide that information so that there's no outliers. Make sure that you're not throwing in information that shouldn't be in there. Make sure that your scripts do exactly what's expected. Thanks for following along, and I hope you found this helpful.